Hey guys, it's Vandiezo, back at another Card Fight Vanguard deck profile. So if you guys enjoy, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and donate to the Patreon. And let's get one started. Today, we have the darkness of the soul, the reincarnation of dark irregulars themselves, the epic, the ultimate Baromagnes from Dark States. Baromagnes, phew, my boy. As much as I love this guy, he got shafted in set 3 because Bruce got a really good triple rare. I mean, it's not that good, it's not that bad either. It's an okay card. It definitely is. Like, a lot of people, because it's a Eugene knockoff, so anyone who's played Eugene has the feeling of it where when you use it, you are more likely to see a trigger from it, and I can speak for that because I have played Eugene before, and every time I use Eugene, I guarantee you, there will always be a trigger. There's never a situation where there's not a trigger. If you don't pull a trigger from Eugene's skill, you are cheating some way, somehow. So, even though it's not important, Baromagnes never really got never got a triple rare in the new set actually, which sucks. But a lot of Greedon support can be infused into Baromagnes because they are both soul-based cards. My problem is though that I didn't want to put any of the Greedon cards here because obviously they're meant for Greedon. So I kind of just kept Baromagnes with a few new cards, and whew, a certain grade 2 that I think I said was really bad turned out to be a saving grace for me. So let's go ahead and get this deck started, shall we? First up is our starter, an Uncanny Burning, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base, auto when it's wrote upon. If you went second, you draw a card. Standard ability, nothing too special about it, you just get a draw when it's wrote upon. Unfortunately, that's how all starters are, and he's green, which I find weird considering the rest of the deck is all like kind of black clothed, but it's fine. It's still a good starter nonetheless, and he looks really cool, and I find his name very interesting, so he's our starter. Next up onto our triggers, one copy of our Overtrigger, Hades Dragon Deity of Resentment, Gale Mage Held, 5k base, 50k shield, grade 0 with boost. Overtrigger, you may only have one Overtrigger in your deck. When revealed as a trigger, remove that card, draw a card, choose one of your units, it gets +1 melee for the turn. If revealed during your draft check, activates additional effect, which is you get during your turn, all of your Vanguards get +10k and a crit until the end of the fight. So, you know, a way to get +10 and a crit to your Vanguard. Really good if you pull it early game, because if you pull this early game, your opponent has a hard time guarding against you because they always have to worry about the extra crit, they always have to worry about the extra 10k. Plus, if you get it during like your grade 1 turn, where they're probably going to take it, the grade 2 turn, they either take it and go to 4 before either of you gets to grade 3, or they guard it, but then they have to guard for a 2 to pass, so a no pass basically, because this is already a 20 at your grade 2 turn, and they're probably at a 10, so 15 is a 1 to pass, and they don't want to risk that crit, so they're probably going to throw down to 25. So all around, Gale Mage Held really good, especially if you pull him early because he's scary. In the later game, he is the equivalent to a critical trigger, but it's still helpful because it adds the extra pressure to guard the Vanguard with it. So one copy of Gage Mage Held. Then we have 2 draw triggers in Vital Lever. Yeah, no, you don't really want to be running draw triggers in this deck because it decks you out quick, but at the same time, and I'll make this argument for every time I run draw triggers, there will come games where you need hand cards to make plays. You can disagree with me if you want, but it's simple logic. There are going to be times where when you play the game, you're going to need a certain card in hand, and this deck cannot fetch stuff out of Soul if you do not have, you know, the ability to call stuff out of Soul. And they're probably going to die during your opponent's turn anyways, especially if they know it. So 2 copies of draw triggers to help us get hand cards. 2 copies of Front Trigger and Huckle Hustle. I'm not going to defend this one as much because I can see why you don't want to run this, especially if you might want to place with Natalia, but she's a Diablo's girl, so I don't run her because she's not a part of this quote-unquote archetype, or she isn't an archetype. But Huckle Hustle, you know, just to add an extra front so your rear guards in the front row can get more power. Of course, that's not the main focus of the deck because you want to be able to deal more damage quicker because they can get a decent amount of power already. So if you want to change that for another crit, you can, but I prefer the extra 2 front just in case you need it. We run 7 crit, 3 regular Flinty Slasher, and 4 Steam Deviate Dragon, 4k base, 15k shield, grade 0 with boost, critical trigger, auto rear guard at the end of the battle that it was boosted, or that it boosted, not it was boosted, put it to soul, choose one of your units, it gets +2 for the turn. So, you know, a way just to get extra soul, which is really nice, especially because your soul count has to be specific, so you can get a +2 out of something, which isn't really the most important part, but you just get an extra soul, which is really good, and there's a reason to call it to rear guard, and if you soul charge it, and for some reason your soul doesn't have a lot of good targets, you can call this. I know one day is going to happen where I soul charge 15 triggers. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I know it's going to happen, so I'm just mentally preparing myself for it. So 4 copies of Steam Deviate, because he's really helpful. And then 4 copies of our Heal Trigger and Steam Scar Malnijal. I don't know why, but this thing is the most high quality card that's come out of D for me in terms of artwork. I don't know why. It just feels like the card that pops the most, and it's definitely not because of the gender or anything. I just don't know why this card feels like it's like they tried the most with to make its art pop. So 4 copies of this one though, because it's a heal trigger and you want heals. On to our grade 1s, 2 copies of Freeze Breeze, grade 1 boost, 8k shield, 8k power, 5k shield. I said I wouldn't get it wrong, and I got it wrong almost immediately. Auto rear, when the attack this unit boosted hits, if your Vanguard is Master of Gravity Baromagnes, you get to soul charge 1. If your soul is 10 or more cards, you get to counterblast 1 to draw 2. So all around, it's very good. It adds the on-hit pressure. If it hits, if you have the main grade 3, obviously, you get a soul charge out of it, which your opponent doesn't want you to have, because then it kind of lets you get more resources for later and lets you have more options for Baromagnes Call of Soul skill. And if you have the 10 or more cards, which is the worrying part about it, you get to draw 2, increase your hand, and then kind of have Guardian Power for the rest of the turn, or for the rest of the game, which is all around really good. Freeze Breeze is really nice. The only downside is to her, she has to hit, or the attack she boosted has to hit. So we run her at 2, because we don't want to see too many of her, but we don't want to see too little of her either. Next up, we have our PG and Rescue Hate Dragon. Grade 1 boost, 0 shield, 6k base, continuous Sentinel, you have up to 4 Sentinels in your deck. Auto when it's placed on guard circle, choose one of your units and cannot be hit to end of battle. If your hand has 2 or more cards, choose a card from your hand and discard it. So standard PG, nothing too special about it, but it's still really good because it means if this and only one other card in your hand when you would play this PG, you do not have to discard anything for it, which is just amazing, because that means you can be as aggressive as you want and still maintain that PG in hand, and it would still defend you a lot. So alright, even if you're pushed into the corner against certain attacks and you have barely enough hand cards to guard with, the PG will always be there for you, and it's really nice unless you soul charge it a bunch for over Skill Hate Dragon. 4 copies of our main grade 1 and our last grade 1, Deep Sonicer. 3 copies of the main deck, 1 copy in the ride deck, 8k base, 5k shield, grade 1 with boost, not grade 0 with boost. Auto when it's placed on Van, you may soul charge 1. So I think this was, no, it wasn't the first one, because it was Steve that was the first one that had the on place do an ability, not on ride upon. So either way, Sonicer is really good because you ride on top of it with you ride Uncanny Burning. You ride this on top of Uncanny Burning. You either get to draw from Uncanny Burning if you went second, or you get to soul charge first with Sonicer. So all around, you have the ability to get soul, and then you have the ability to draw. You always get to pick the order, or you just get a soul charge out of it because maybe you went first. And then continues rear guard during your turn. If your soul is 10 or more cards, it gets plus 10. So this becomes an 18k swing. A lot of people don't run this after the booster set one, and I can see why, because there are a lot more valid grade 1s over this, but I still say this is pretty good because it's an 18k swing on its own. Baromagnes, the cards it calls out of soul, get plus 10 again. So this is a 28k swing with Baromagnes. Persona Rare makes it 38. So all around, I prefer Deep Sonicer. It's really nice, helps you get those numbers, and is really powerful. Plus he's a grade 1, so it allows you to kind of play more aggressively because you can call him to the back row and they'll still get power. So 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the right deck. And the good news is, because this deck is basically Dark Riders Incarnate, anything that goes in the soul is effectively within reach to grab it, so it's a really good thing that this is in the soul. So yeah, it's one of the ride decks that can actually abuse the crap out of their grade 1s. Also, the fun fact about this deck, I call it Soul Shock. Take that as you will. On to our grade 2s. I believe when we first were introduced to this, I said I didn't like it, and I still don't, because I don't like how it skills a Hail Mary skill, but oh my god, it's a saving grace. 2 copies of Keenly Rudely. 10k base, 5k shield, grade 2 with intercept. Auto when it's placed on rear. If your Vanguard is Master of Gravity Baromagnes, Counterblast 1, choose any number of normal units from your soul, and this unit gets plus 5k for the until end of turn for each card chosen. Return all the chosen cards to your deck and shuffle it. Right deck cards are returned to the right deck. So basically, you are sending more non-triggers back to deck, but in exchange you are not decking yourself out, and it gets plus 5 for each one returned. I have only ever used her once, and I'm pretty sure, and it was on camera with the Prison versus Baromagnes video. Keenly Rudely got plus, I don't know how much, and was only stopped by a PG, I think, or Darrow Violet, or was just a take. I don't remember what happened. Point is, Keenly Rudely, very powerful. Yes, she sends non-triggers back. Yes, she costs a counterblast, so you kind of have to time it right, but oh by golly Jesus, she is a finisher. She gets so much power, and she can swing for game. And plus, you can just call one out of soul during the battle phase with Baromagnes, making it harder for them to guard. Keenly Rudely is an amazing grade 2, and I have slowly begun to love it. I still hate its skill because it is a Hail Mary skill, and it does not work at all in the early game, but I love it when it's the late game when you can abuse the crap out of this. Just get one in soul, and you have access to it for the rest of the game, and then when you need it the most, she'll come out and kick ass for you. 2 copies of Keenly Rudely, amazing card. 4 copies of Steam Mage Ashura, 10k base, 5k shield, grade 2 with intercept. Continues guard circle. If your soul has 7 or more cards, it gets plus 5k shield, so 10k shield, which is really nice. And auto when it's retired from guard circle, you may put it to soul. So send it to soul, Baromagnes, and call it out later. Unfortunately, you won't be able to bounce it to hand, especially because I got rid of the order that allows you to bounce soul cards to hand. But being a 10k shield is still pretty nice, and I like it, and it's really easy to accomplish in the deck, and it's for free, so 4 of. 4 of Selfish Engraver, 10k base, 5k shield, grade 2 with intercept. Auto rear when this unit attack hits, soul charge 1. Auto rear at the end of the battle that it attacked. If your soul has 10 or more cards, put this unit into your soul and counter charge 1. So that on hit pressure, which is really nice, because a lot of the times it might hit, a lot of the times it might not hit. Depends. Like if you do it early game, they're probably going to let it hit. You get a soul charge out of it. Okay, you got more soul for free. And not to mention at the end of the battle that your attack, she'll get you another soul, followed by counter charging, meaning you can use more counter blast. All around, this is an amazing card, and in Baromagnes, you gotta run this at 4. There is no excuse not to run this at 4 unless they give us another counter charger. I mean, technically they did include Muddler, but this is obviously better than Cleave Muddler because I believe Muddler has another cost, so 4 copies of Selfish Engraver. 3 copies of Electro Spartan, our main grade 2, and our last grade 2. 2 copies in the main deck, 1 copy in the ride deck. 10k base, 5k shield, grade 2 with intercept. Auto when it's ruled upon by Master of Gravity Baromagnes. Put a hand card to soul, draw a card and soul charge 1. So, if you ride upon it with the main grade 3, which sucks because Sonicer didn't require either of the other 2 cards to be useful. This one requires Baromagnes to be useful, but it's still fine. You get 2 soul out of it, and you get to draw. The unfortunate part is you always got to put a hand card to soul, and for some reason every time this goes off, I never have the perfect target in hand or something that I actually want to get rid of. So, unfortunately, that always happens with Electro Spartan, but good news is Baromagnes can just fish it out of soul with its skill, so if you know you're going to hit that 15 soul that turn, just put in something that you would have called anyways, and you also just get a draw out of it, so you're basically just getting 2 soul. And auto when it's placed on rear, counterblast 1 to soul charge 2. Cool. So the first ability, that's an on road upon ability, is for free, or basically you don't pay a cost for it. And Electro Spartan's other ability, the on place, you get Soul Charge of 2, is only a counterblast of 1. If you're going Turbo Soul Charge moment, maybe you do this, and kind of like how I did, where I called 2 Electro Spartans in one go, and then Soul Charged 4, then I think I called 2 Phantasmagoria Magician, and Soul Charge another 4. If you're going hyper speed like that for your Soul Charges, go right ahead with that play. Otherwise, I just say don't use that all in one go because it will waste your counterblast very quickly. And while Selfish Engraver is really good, it will only counterback it if you have a lot of Selfish Engravers in hand. So 2 of Electro Spartan in the main deck, 1 of in the ride deck. He's still a really good grade 2 though. Not to mention he can just be placed from anywhere, so you can place him from Soul and he'll still be useful. Next up, we have Phantasma Magician Curtis, our first grade 3 at 4 copies, and I still run this guy, despite the fact a lot of people don't run him, and I can see why, but the dude is for free, so... grade 3, Twin Jet, Persona Ride, 13k base, auto when it's placed on rear, if your Vanguard is Master of Gravity, Baromagnes, Soul Charge 2. So automatically, it does require Baromagnes to be useful, so if they ever made like a pseudo Baromagnes, like kind of how like they did with Zorga, where they made a budget version of him, then this wouldn't be useful in it because it's not a Baromagnes grade 3, but oh my god, just an on-play, Soul Charge 2. It is literally this thing, but restrictive to Baromagnes, but you also get it for free, so I'm fine with that. And then Act Rear, if your soul has 10 or more cards, Counterblast 2, and all of your formulas get plus 5 for the turn. I've never really used that because like it costs Counterblast, and Selfish Engraver, while she does Countercharge, I always need to use Baromagnes as much as possible, because it pushes out more than what this 5k does. Now, if I was playing in a rotation fight where you and your partner share damage, and they're using a deck that doesn't use up that much counterblast, then I'll be like, hey, do you mind if I use up 2 counterblast to use Curtis skill? And then they say yes, okay, yeah, then I'll use Curtis skill, because I rarely use it, so the 5k is helpful. It's just that I never use it myself. It is mainly here for that Soul Charge 2 skill, but if you see the opportunity to use the 5k and that it will kill your opponent for it, or like it will get rid of more hand cards, go for it. Either way, Curtis is an amazing card, 4 of. But also, ruling on his 5k skill real quickly, unlike Persona Rides where the fighter gets it, you do not get it. The rear guards in the front row get it. Or the units in the front row get it. So basically, once the units disappear, the units you call out afterwards from Baromagnes skill do not get the power, because only the units that were currently on the field got it. So that's just how it works, by the way. It's not how Persona Ride works. So 4 copies of Curtis, though, because he's still an amazing grade 3. And our last normal unit, 4 copies of our main grade 3, 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the ride deck, Master of Gravity, Baromagnes. So, grade 3, 200, Persona Ride, 13k base, auto, Vanguard, when it attacks, counterblast 1, perform all the following according to the number of cards in soul. First off, he has one ability that has 3 sub-abilities. Second off, The fun part about him is he doesn't have to attack a Vanguard. So if you wanted to damage starve the opponent for some reason, or like Baromagnes wasn't going to hit for some reason, you could just swing at the rear guard, so that's a plus. Anyways, 5 or more, draw a card, and if you have 5 or more cards in soul, draw a card. 10 or more cards in soul, plus 10k and a crit. And 15 or more, both you and your opponent shove all their own rear guards to soul, choose up to 2 cards from your soul, call them to rear guard, and they get plus 10. So that's really good. So you get to use all of them if you have the 15 or more in soul. So you draw a card, okay, so get to refill your hand, and it's a really good way, like if you need to use Baromagnes early just to get hand cards. The 10k and a crit, okay, so basically in pseudo over trigger to kind of push numbers, and that does so much work with the over trigger because that's 33 triple critical. Your opponent's guarding that. Even if they've seen the over trigger come out, they're still PGing because they know what happens if that hits. So all around, that ability is really good. So you can just stop at the 10 or more cards in soul, honestly, because that's still a good ability. But if you wanted to go for that power, which I do suggest you go for it, it nukes both players' field. So if they're going aggressive with their field play, like something like Magnolia, even though you'd be giving them soul, which would technically be helping them, or something like Bruce, I guess, where they're calling down boards. I mean, before Derek, of course, you would shove them to soul, and while you are giving them resources for their soul blasting, you're also nuking their field, basically, so they kind of can't call stuff from soul, unless they're like something like Bruce, honestly. And because they're not being retired by, or because they're not being put to drop, they're not being retired by effects, so things that have on retire effects don't go off. So all around, Baromagnes is really good. Plus he gets you, those 2 rear guards that get plus 10, and typically I like to call Sonicro with it just so I have 1 unit at 28, 28, and then normally I would call a Selfish Engraver to refund the cost. So all around, Baromagnes is an amazing grade 3, get you power, get you multi-attack, get you criticals, get you pressure, and get you that 1 hand card, which the one time I used it only to get that draw did actually help me. So all around, he's an amazing grade 3, and I love him for that. And he's actually really cheap. He's like 79 cents. So if you want him, go get him. 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the right deck. And then the last card in this deck, which a lot of people are probably surprised to see this, 2 copies of our normal order Brother Soul. You soul charge 2. Nothing too special about it. It's just a free soul charge 2. There's no condition to it. There is no cost to it. It is just soul charge 2. Here's why this is here. Because unlike the other orders, it literally costs nothing to use. I mean, yeah, you could use a Blitz order here, maybe. If you wanted to, you could run the Blitz order here, Tartarus Beat Scrum, just to get plus 15k shield. But honestly, I prefer Brother Soul, because it gets you the more soul charge, and it does it for free. So you can use Baromagnes more consistently. That's how I like to see it, and this actually does help me a lot in games. If you think your deck needs Beat Scrum more, or like Supernatural Extraction more, use one of those 2, but in my opinion, you need something that does it for free, and you need more soul. Brother Soul works out for you. That's my opinion on this. But if you want to go your other way, you can go the other way. But I like Brother Soul, so 2 of. And that's it for the deck. So I hope you guys enjoyed. This deck is honestly really fun. You get a lot of soul. It brings back the Dark Irregulars aesthetic, except not too soul chargy, and it still does a lot of good plays. It's like Pale Moon and Dark Irregulars mixed into one. They get a good amount of power. They get a good amount of soul. They get a good amount of hand cards in the early game. In the late game, that's kind of where it's tend to fall apart at, especially because you have lower deck card amount. But then they gave us Keen Rudely, which literally gets your deck back, even though it drains your soul entirely, but it also gives you more power. So all around, I like this deck. It's really fun. If you want to build it, go ahead and build it yourself because it's actually really cheap. It's one of the cheaper decks. I'm not going to say Overdress itself is expensive. I'm just saying that it's one of the cheaper decks out of the Overdress group. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join to the Patreon, join the Discord, follow the Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguards.